Hello and welcome. I'm Tanya Charlton. Today we're going to talk about how to get started with teaching D'Aulaire's Greek myths. If this is your first time with us, go ahead and subscribe to make sure you get updates when we post new curriculum guides to the channel. And if you find this video helpful, give us a thumbs up and let us know what you think. Now, without further ado, let's jump in. First, we need to talk about what you will need in order to teach this course. This beautifully illustrated storybook will bring Greek mythology alive for your students. You will also need a student guide for each student and the teacher manual for yourself. Finally, you will want a set of flashcards so you can drill students on the information we want them to learn to mastery. The teacher manual has all the answers to the student guide layered on for you, and unit tests and test keys. If you're using these materials with a young student, this may be the first time you've formally tested your student on a course like this, so you'll want to be sure to do a thorough review each week. Take advantage of the questions to mark for review and mastery section of the teacher guide. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. You may want to get the Memoria Press lesson plans, but this course is really easy to schedule. We recommend that you do one lesson every week if you want to get through the course in a year. Each lesson should take approximately an hour and a half each week. If you want a slower pace, you can complete a lesson every 2 weeks, so the course will last 2 years for you. Either pace is fine. You're homeschooling, so you have the flexibility to choose the pace that is best for you and your students. Once you have all your supplies, the first thing you will need to do is prepare yourself. Read all the teacher guidelines in the teacher manual, as well as the lesson plans. I'm a real proponent of reading the text ahead of time if you can get to that. I know it's a lot to ask, but if you've already read the material before you study it with your students, it will enhance your ability to teach it. If not, that's okay. You can study it alongside your students and enjoy discovering the wonder of mythology together. Now, let's talk about what a typical lesson will look like. The study guide is divided into units, and each unit has 5 lessons. At the end of every 5 lessons, there will be a unit review and test. The first thing to do when starting a lesson is to read over the facts to know. The facts to know is a list of names, places, and other references that will help with reading, like reading notes. They will familiarize students with the characters and places they are getting ready to read about. This should only take a couple of minutes. Then go over the vocabulary section of the lesson. Vocabulary in our classical studies courses has a more limited goal than the vocabulary work we do in literature, where we are working hard to help students learn to recognize the meanings of words through the context of their reading. In classical studies, it's fine to give students the definitions of words they don't know without taking a lot of time to talk about them. Vocabulary here is intended to enhance the reading experience. After you've talked about the facts to know and filled in the vocabulary, you are ready to read. Some students may not be ready to read D'Aulaire's Greek myths independently, and that's fine. It's more difficult reading than the literature selections. So if your student does better with this book being used as a read aloud, that is perfectly acceptable. You could let your student reread independently after you've completed the lesson if you feel it would be helpful. Since these are all fantasy stories, students like to revisit them and live in that imaginative world by themselves sometimes. After you've completed the reading, it's time to answer the comprehension questions. For young students, this should be a joint project, with you as the teacher asking the students for an oral answer to each question. You put the answer on the board, and the students copy it into their student guides. We prefer full sentence answers, but you can make that decision for your students. Also, you may find that you don't have time to write answers to every question, and that's okay. Just make sure you write answers to the questions that are on the test, so students have their answers to study. And always talk about every question, even if you don't put a written answer in your study guide. The answers we've put in the teacher manual are very detailed. We don't expect the student answers to be that long or detailed. As long as your student has given you a good answer that thoroughly answers the question, that is what you want to put on the board. Older students can answer the questions independently, and you can use your teacher manual answers to check them without having to read the material yourself. You can decide when you want your student to mark the questions that will be on the test, which is the questions to mark for review and mastery section of your teacher manual. Students can circle the number of the questions or they can highlight them, whatever your preference is. This is an important step because it shows students what is important as they study. So I'm a fan of marking the lesson at the beginning rather than the end. It's a way of modeling for the students how to discern the important things they're studying. The last thing you need to do is fill in the drill questions in the appendix of your study guide. They are marked by lesson, so you will know which ones to fill in each week. These drill questions match the drill question flashcards you will use for review, and they represent the cumulative information we want students to retain from their study of Greek mythology. If your students have mastered the drill questions by the end of this course, you have done well and should be proud. Now let's take a minute to talk about review. You want to review at the beginning of each class. Your review should be two-faceted. First, you need to review all the material students have marked in the lessons within the current unit they're studying. This will help prepare them for the upcoming unit test. Secondly, you need to review the drill questions cumulatively from the entire year. This can be a short game using the flashcards, like how many cards can you answer in 30 seconds? It should be fun, but it also should be a way for you to see that your students are learning to mastery. Your review should only take the first 10 minutes of class, and it's a great warm-up to the new lesson. The activities in each lesson are purely supplemental, so don't feel you have to complete them unless you have the time. They can be used as writing projects, though, so look over them and see if they would work well within your composition class. Greek mythology should be fun, so read and enjoy this time together. And when your students get to Homer and Shakespeare, they'll be prepared for all the classical references to mythology that exist there, enhancing their experience with not just these authors, but many more. Thank you for joining us for today's Teaching Guidelines. If you found it helpful, be sure to check out our Teaching Guidelines playlist that includes resources and tips for curriculum from Memoria Press. As always, subscribe to get more videos like these. Comment below to let us know what you'd like to see in the future, and click the bell icon to know when we post new content to the channel. I'm Tanya Charlton. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.